He set his alarm for 6 a.m. every single day for 3 years. And every single day, he turned it off. Not snoozed, turned it off. Rolled over, pulled the blanket tighter, and told himself the same thing he always did. Tomorrow. I'll start tomorrow. But here's what nobody tells you about tomorrow. It has a way of becoming the most expensive word in your life. Once upon a time, there was a young boy named Arjun. He was 24 years old, living in a one-room apartment that smelled like instant noodles and broken plans. From the outside, his life looked completely normal. He had a job, a customer service job that paid just enough to cover rent and not a single thing more. He had a phone, some clothes, a laptop with 3 cracked pixels in the corner. He had Wi-Fi, he had Instagram. He had all the tools that everyone said were enough to build something. But every night, Arjun would sit on his bed, open his phone, and scroll. Not because he was entertained, not because he was relaxing. He scrolled because it was easier than thinking. Because the second he put the phone down and the room went quiet, the thoughts came in. Why are you still here? Why haven't you done anything? What are you actually waiting for? He'd wanted to start a business since he was 19. He had notebooks, actual physical notebooks full of ideas, a clothing brand, a YouTube channel, a fitness app, a food blog. He'd started 4 of them, finished none. Every time he'd get excited about something, he'd spend the first 3 days obsessing over it. He'd research for hours, he'd watch videos on how to start, what tools to use, what mistakes to avoid. He'd design a logo on Canva. He'd make a plan in Notion. He'd even tell 1 or 2 people about it. And then, somewhere around day 4 or 5, the excitement would die. And what was left wasn't laziness. That's the thing people misunderstand. It wasn't laziness. It was fear that had dressed itself up to look like laziness. Fear that if he actually tried, really tried, and still failed, then there'd be nothing left to blame. No excuses. Just him. So it was easier to not try. It was easier to say, I'm still figuring it out, and go back to scrolling. His friends were getting promotions. One of them had just bought a car. Another one was getting married, and Arjun would congratulate them with a smile on his face and a hollow feeling in his chest that he couldn't explain to anyone. He wasn't jealous. That's the part that confused him. He genuinely felt happy for them. But at the same time, he felt like he was watching his own life from a window, like it was happening to someone else, and he was just a spectator, present, but not really there. He'd call his mom on Sundays. She'd ask how he was doing. He'd say good. She'd ask if he was eating properly. He'd say yes. She'd tell him she was proud of him. And something about that, about her being proud of a version of him that didn't really exist, that was the thing that hurt the most. Then came February. His company announced layoffs. Arjun wasn't in the first round, but his manager pulled him aside and said, with that specific kind of corporate kindness that makes everything worse, "We're evaluating everyone over the next quarter." He drove home that evening and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before going upstairs. He didn't know why. He just couldn't make himself move. That night, he did the math. If he lost his job, he had 43 days of rent covered. That's it. 43 days before the situation became a crisis. And for the first time, "I'll figure it out eventually" stopped being a comfort and started being a countdown. He couldn't sleep. He'd lie there and run simulations in his head. What if I apply for other jobs? What if I move back home? What if I... And then he'd stop himself. Because every path felt like surrender. Every option felt like proof of something he didn't want to prove. He started waking up at 3 a.m. Not by choice, but by anxiety. His heart would be racing. His mind would already be moving at full speed, spinning through worst-case scenarios before he'd even fully opened his eyes. He'd check his phone. 3:17 a.m. 3:42 a.m. 4:05 a.m. Then eventually, exhausted, he'd drift back to sleep around 5. And when his alarm went off at 6, he'd turn it off. Not because he was being lazy, but because he was already completely drained before the day had even started. This went on for weeks. He stopped going to the gym. He stopped cooking. He started eating at odd hours. Too late? Or not at all. His room got messier, not dramatically messy, but that specific kind of mess that tells you someone's slowly losing their grip. Clothes on the chair, dishes in the sink a day longer than they should be. Small things, but they compound. He applied for 2 jobs that month. Got 1 response. It went nowhere. One evening, he was on the phone with his older cousin, Vikram, who lived in Pune. Vikram was older, 31, and had gone through his own rough patch a few years ago. Arjun didn't plan to open up. He didn't even realize he was doing it until he was already talking, and he said something he'd never said out loud before. "I think I've been wasting my life. Like, actually wasting it. And the worst part is, I know it. I've known it for years, and I still can't stop." There was a pause on the other end. Vikram didn't say, "You're being too hard on yourself." He didn't say, "You're still young, you have time." Those were the things Arjun had been telling himself. They didn't help. Instead, Vikram said something strange. He said, "What time do you wake up?" Arjun almost laughed. "What does that have to do with anything? Just tell me." "I don't know. 8? 8:30? Depends on the day." Another pause.
And then Vikram said, "There's something I want you to try. Not because it's magic, it's not, but just try it for 2 weeks and tell me what happens." Arjun expected something complicated, a system, a routine, a 5-step framework. He was already preparing to nod politely and not do it. But Vikram said, "Wake up at 6 a.m. Don't check your phone, don't open Instagram, don't check your emails, don't look at any notifications. Just wake up, drink some water, go outside, even for 10 minutes, or just sit by the window. That's it. That's it. That's it. Nothing else. Don't start a business in the morning, don't write a plan, don't do anything productive. Just be awake before the rest of the noise starts." Arjun was quiet for a moment. He'd been expecting a solution. This didn't feel like one. "Why?" he asked. Vikram said, "Because right now, every single day starts with you already behind. You wake up when the world is already moving, and you spend the whole day chasing it. I want you to try waking up before the world, just to see what it feels like to be ahead of something, even if it's just the clock." They talked for a few more minutes. Arjun said he'd try it. He mostly meant it. That night, he set his alarm, 6 a.m. He put his phone across the room so he'd have to get up to turn it off. A small move, but it mattered. The next morning, the alarm went off. He got up, stumbled across the room, picked up his phone, and, for the first time in years, he didn't turn it off. He snoozed it twice, but the third time, he turned the light on. And here's the thing nobody prepares you for about waking up early. The first few days, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like a breakthrough. It just feels like being tired at an earlier time. He went to the kitchen, drank a glass of water, stood by the window and looked at the street below. It was quiet. A delivery truck was parked outside. A man with a dog was walking past. The sky was that particular shade of dark blue that only exists for about 30 minutes before the sun actually rises. He didn't have an epiphany. He didn't feel suddenly motivated. He just noticed for the first time in a long time that the world was quiet, and so was his head. Just for a moment, 10 minutes maybe, but it was the first 10 minutes in months that didn't belong to anxiety or comparison or guilt. They were just his. He went back to bed after that, but something had shifted, just slightly. He did it again the next day and the day after that. Some days he lasted 5 minutes by the window. Some days he sat for 30, just with his thoughts, no input from the outside world, no opinions, no highlight reels, just him and the morning and the strange, uncomfortable, gradually becoming comfortable silence. By the end of the first week, he noticed something he hadn't expected. He wasn't more productive yet. His situation hadn't changed. He still had the same job, the same apartment, the same fears. But he felt slightly less reactive, like there was a small pause between a thought and his response to it that hadn't been there before. He started using the morning time to think, not to plan, not to set goals, just to think. Without his phone, without distractions, he'd sit and let his mind wander. And he started noticing patterns in his own thinking that he'd never seen before because he'd never been still enough to see them. He noticed that most of his fear wasn't about failing. It was about being seen failing. It was about what people would think, about being the guy who tried something and it didn't work. And once he saw that clearly, once he named it, it became a little smaller. In week 2, he started writing. Not a business plan, nothing like that, just writing down whatever he was thinking in the mornings. Stream of consciousness stuff, messy, unfiltered thoughts on his phone's notes app. And something about externalizing the noise in his head, getting it out of his mind and onto a screen, made it feel more manageable. He started sleeping better, not dramatically, but noticeably. He was falling asleep earlier because he was actually tired by 10 p.m., and waking up at 6 started feeling less like an alarm and more like a natural rhythm. In week 3, he applied for a job, but this time he actually sat and thought about what he wanted, not just what was available, not just what would stop the bleeding financially. He applied to a startup that was doing something he found genuinely interesting, even though it paid slightly less than what he'd been making. For the first time, he wrote a cover letter that didn't sound like every other cover letter because he wasn't rushing. He was thinking clearly. He got a call back. And here's what I want you to notice. That callback didn't happen because he woke up at 6 a.m. Waking up early doesn't get you jobs or build businesses. That's not the point. The point is what the quiet mornings were doing to his relationship with himself. He was slowly, gradually becoming someone who was present in his own life again, someone who was making decisions instead of reacting to circumstances. He started working on a small project, not the clothing brand or the app, something simpler. He started documenting the books he was reading, writing a few paragraphs about each one and posting them on a simple blog he made in an afternoon. Nobody read it for weeks. That was fine. He wasn't doing it for the audience yet. He was doing it to prove to himself that he could finish something. He finished 5 posts, then 10, then 20. His cousin called him about 6 weeks, asked how it was going. Arjun was quiet for a second, and then he said, "I feel like I got my mind back." Vikram just said, "Yeah, that's what 6 a.m. does."
Now here's the part of the story I want to sit with for a moment. Arjun didn't become a millionaire. He didn't go viral. He didn't build the business of his dreams in 6 weeks. He got a new job he actually liked. He kept writing. He kept waking up at 6. And slowly, month by month, the person in the mirror started looking like someone he recognized again. And that, to me, is the whole thing.
We spend so much time looking for the big move, the right opportunity, the perfect timing, the moment when everything aligns and we finally feel ready. And while we're waiting, the days keep passing, the alarms keep going off, and we keep turning them off. But what Arjun found at 6 a.m. wasn't productivity. It wasn't a morning routine. It wasn't a hustle hack or a life hack or any kind of hack. What he found was something much simpler and much rarer. He found 10 minutes that nobody owned but him. 10 minutes before the notifications, before the pressure, before the comparison, before the world told him who he should be and what he should want and how far behind he was. 10 minutes that belonged entirely to him. And in those 10 minutes, he slowly, carefully, quietly started rebuilding his relationship with his own mind. He started hearing his own thoughts again. Not the thoughts that anxiety was shouting, not the thoughts that came from watching other people's success. His thoughts, his actual voice, the one that had been buried under years of noise. That voice told him what he actually wanted. It told him where his real fear lived. It told him that he wasn't broken and he wasn't behind and he wasn't a failure. It told him that he'd just been so overwhelmed for so long that he'd stopped being able to tell the difference between what he felt and what he'd absorbed from everything around him. You know what the secret is about 6 a.m.? It's not the hour. You could find it at 5 a.m. or 10 p.m. if you lived alone on an island. The secret is the silence before the world gets loud. The few minutes you take before you hand your attention to everything else, before you let the feed decide your mood, before you check if anyone liked your photo, before you read news that makes you feel small or scared, before the day takes over. Most people give their mind away the second they open their eyes. They check their phone in bed, still half asleep, and within 60 seconds, their brain is already comparing and worrying and reacting. And then they wonder why they feel tired before the day even starts. They wonder why they feel like they're always running but never getting anywhere. The morning is the one window in the day where your mind is still yours. And most of us slam it shut before we even realized it was open. Arjun found his window, and once he found it, once he started protecting it, everything else started to become possible. Not easy, not fast, but possible. So here's what I want to leave you with. Tomorrow morning, your alarm is going to go off, and for a moment, just a moment, before you do anything else, before you reach for your phone, before you check what's happening in the world, before you think about everything you have to do, just be awake. Just sit with yourself. Just let the morning be quiet. You don't have to build a business in that silence. You don't have to plan your future or figure out your purpose. You don't have to do anything impressive. You just have to show up for yourself before anyone else gets to you. Because here's the truth that Arjun learned and that nobody really talks about. The reason most people don't change isn't because they don't have the right strategy or the right opportunity or the right connections. It's because they never stop long enough to hear themselves think. And once you can hear yourself, really hear yourself, you start to realize that you already know what you need to do. You always did. You just had to get quiet enough to listen. Set the alarm. Don't turn it off. That's the secret. If this story touched something in you today, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who need to hear this. And if you're new here, stick around. We tell stories like this every week. Real ones, human ones, the kind that don't show up in your morning podcast. Thank you for watching. Seriously, take care of yourself out there. I'll see you in the next one.